Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of One Pot for All. So, today is finally the day. We're going to be talking about Barbie and Oppenheimer. And I'm probably the last person on this planet to do a review of Barbenheimer, but I kind of had to. I'm still going to admit that this was not my natural instinct. I actually was planning to stick to my usual structure of 5 Oscar nominated movies per review episode. But arguably, Barbie and Oppenheimer are the most important movies of 2023. And there's so much to say about them that, this seems like the natural decision to make. So today's the day. And I actually just wanted to say, let's dive right in and let me give you some background info first. So, when it was clear that Barbie and Oppenheimer would be released on the same day, the entire Barbenheimer ecstasy started. And actually, I really enjoyed it. I was looking forward to both movies. I really was very keen on just enjoying my time with Barbie and then just learning more about Oppenheimer and the atomic bomb and the entire story, backstory, history. I was really interested in both movies equally, I think. I saw all the trailers for Barbie and, of course, all the trailers for Oppenheimer, but the Barbie trailers really made me laugh or at least smile, and I was very much looking forward to be very well entertained by both movies. I did not watch a double feature. Actually, now that I think about it, I'm kind of happy I didn't. I know a lot of people really wanted to see both movies on the same day, but I think just for me personally, this would not have been the right choice. It would have been overwhelming and just like an overload of thoughts and emotions and impressions. And I usually can't cope with that quite well. So I do like to have a little bit of a break in between. And I'm very glad that this worked out well. So I watched Barbie first, and then a few days later, I saw Oppenheimer. And I convinced one of my friends to go to Oppenheimer with me. And I'm very happy that she did, because I think this is the kind of movie that you do not want to see all by yourself. I did, however, watch Barbie by myself, and I really didn't mind. I think that's the kind of movie that you can see on your own, and it's just fine, especially if you feel well entertained. So, as I saw Barbie first, I thought it would be the logical choice to start with my review of Barbie in this episode. And honestly, I have a huge list of bullet points for both movies, actually. But my list for Barbie is a bit longer, and I think that's because I was not the biggest fan of the movie. But let's start with nominations first. And Barbie is nominated for so many Oscars that it's going to be a blast reading this list. Let's do this. So it's nominated for Best Picture, Best Supporting Actor for Ryan Gosling, Best Supporting Actress for America Ferrera, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Original Song for I'm Just Ken, and What Was I Made For by Billie Eilish, then Costume Design and Production Design. So a good list, a solid list, but of course some nominations are missing. And I will be talking about this later on, but yes, I'm also definitely upset that Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie were not nominated for this movie. But let's go back to my overall thoughts on the movie. Why was I not the biggest fan of Barbie? Maybe it was a matter of expectations. I really don't want to go there because I think usually I can keep my expectations in check, especially because I watch so many movies on a regular basis. So this is usually not one of my biggest issues I have with movies. So I recently saw a movie that I really wanted to see desperately, and I did have high expectations, but I totally managed to control myself and just give an honest review of what I thought the movie was like without being too disappointed or too hyped. So usually I'm really good at figuring this out and dealing with that. So I'm not going to blame any expectations I set for Barbie because I don't think that's the reason why, at the end of the day, I didn't enjoy the movie as much as other people did. I'm not saying it was a bad movie, not at all. I've seen so much worse, and I know I say that every episode, but the movies I've seen at this point, it's just sometimes it's really hard to beat the bad ones. Most movies are just average, and that's fine. And I think Barbie was a little bit better for me than average, but it was very close to just being an average movie. And I think in a couple of years, maybe like in a decade, and yeah, 10 years actually is not that long. I was just recently talking to a friend realizing American Hustle came out in 2014, and that's like 10 years ago. But hey, still thinking about that movie. But I don't think I will be necessarily thinking about Barbie after this episode, or maybe after the Oscar ceremony, and then, that's going to be it. I will think about the costumes and the set design because these were very impressive things for me. But other than that, I think I will forget about the movie and the plot and the characters And that's probably the first hint for me that I just found it okay, but definitely not bad. So let's get started. I want to mention that I was definitely very impressed with the first look that we got, except for the opener, which was glorious in itself with the reference. It was just perfect. Actually, I really enjoyed that. When you look at Barbie Land for the first time, I mean, there is no other feeling than just being overwhelmed in the most amazing way. The colors, the sets, the costumes, everything was perfect. So, my first little bullet point on my list is visual pleasure because I mean, it was just perfect. It was absolutely exciting. It was awesome. And I'm really crossing my fingers that Barbie is going to be successful when it comes to these kinds of nominees because they have so deserved their nominations. And I'm really looking forward to some people just receiving their Oscar statues because, I mean, that was awesome work. And what I found most impressive actually was that there was no CGI involved. So all of these sets were actually built. That's amazing. Just painting the skies, the sunrise, the sunset, or whatever, and then building these huge doll houses. That is awesome, impressive, and just so great to look at. So, first look was a 10 out of 10 for me. I really liked that the world was so imaginative and also colorful and just beautiful. And I think, that really shows the skillful design and the craftsmanship. And also that Greta Gerwig knew exactly what she was doing. I also think that it completely reminded me of the way that I used to play with my Barbie dolls. I actually just had one Barbie doll and lots of other random dolls. But anyway, I really liked small details. For example, that Barbie is not using any stairs because, of course not. We would just take the doll and let her just like fly off the roof, just like Margot Robbie did in the movie. And that was very specific to exactly the way we used to play with these dolls. So it was just like remembering your childhood and playing in good times. And these small details, Barbie not eating any real food, not taking a proper shower, just imagining all of that really won me over in the first minutes of the movie. It was just exactly what I expected and a little bit more than I expected. So, yeah, I was very hyped when the movie started out. So, I don't know how you felt about the movie when you first heard there was going to be a Barbie movie. For me, I was like, so it's going to be a 90-minute adult commercial? I could not imagine what you could make out of a plastic doll and what kind of message the movie would have and all of that. So the journey from, okay, this is going to be a commercial to, oh, no, you can make this have a message and character development that I really did not see coming. That really impressed me. So again, like the first minutes of the movie, they felt good and they felt like, oh wow, this is better than I thought. And then you have the first character introductions and the first scenes, and then you meet weird Barbie and normal Barbie, or like regular standard, I don't know what she was called. But the Birkenstock scene, I'm German. I have to say it. Birkenstocks are absolute treasures. So I loved the celebration of Birkenstocks, especially at the end of the movie. But yeah, I love that they just made an appearance because, oh my God, they're amazing and comfortable. So little things, as I said, reminding me of my childhood or just, I don't know, random things I also wear in my own personal life, Birkenstocks. It was just nice. It felt good watching, and I just had a really good feeling about like moving on with the plot and seeing where Barbie would end up. So I guess very unconsciously, I'm going to be talking about the things I liked about the movie first, and I'm just going to continue mentioning a few things. So first of all, the musical elements. I really liked the songs. I also appreciated the dancing, but especially the music choices they made. For example, the I'm Just Ken song, which just won me over immediately. I really liked it. I just like the melody. I actually still listen to the Christmas version they came out with because I think it's even better. But then, of course, What Was I Made For by Billie Eilish is just such a great song. And you didn't only hear it in the movie, but also for months on end on TikTok and Instagram. And it's just still there. And yeah, rightfully so. So it's a great song and I really liked it. But also, I really enjoyed that the movie was very self aware. They made fun of themselves, they made many references to Barbie dolls, and they just had this commitment to the ridiculousness of it all. And I did really appreciate that. So I did definitely think it was very artificial, not just like in the world and character building, but also everything about it was very artificial, but in a good way and in an entertaining way. So having this huge dance party or the weird dialogue at the beach, all of that was very self-aware and ridiculous. And this, of course, also leads me to the amazing cast of the movie, because I think this is one of the most important parts of a movie review. If you have a shitty cast or an exceptional cast, this can really make or break a movie. So for this one, I think there could not have been a better cast. I think Margot and Ryan, especially the two of them. And I've been following Margot on the sidelines. I'm like not a huge fan, but I just like her and I like seeing her. And I've been following her since she starred in The Wolf of Wall Street. And it's been so exciting to just follow her career and that she started producing, especially also on this movie, as we know. But I also think Ryan Gosling is a very funny actor. I think he has a great comedic talent. And for this movie, he was shining bright. So, yeah, the cast was great. I can't mention everyone, but yes, I think these two are just the stars of the movie for a good reason. And I think without the two of them and their talent and timing and the way they portrayed Barbie and Ken, would not have been the same without them. I also want to mention Kate McKinnon as Weird Barbie, who I liked, and Michael Cera as Alan. Alan, shining bright. That was just like the best part of the movie. Every time Alan appeared, it made me laugh. Every time he just stood in the background, I just cracked up. I need more Alan in this movie. That's like my big complaint. More Alan. But yeah, Michael Cera as Alan was just epic. And then, of course, there's Helen Mirren as the narrator. I really liked that one moment where she was breaking the fourth wall, addressing Margot Robbie's beauty. And it was just a really cool, fun moment that I didn't expect and didn't see coming. So her voice, you didn't even have to see her, but her voice really carried this well. So also really rooting for more Helen Mirren on screens and off, because even the voice just managed to pull everything together. And you know what? I think we've come to the end of the list of things I liked about the Barbie movie. And it's not a short list and it's not unimportant things. So to sum it up, it's set design, costume design, the cast, including the narration, and the music. These are all really important parts about a movie. But what I had my issues with was the plot, the development of the plot, the development of the characters. And I think it's time to address some problems. So where to start when you have a full list of things that you want to analyze and that you want to review and talk about? I think I'm just going to start with something super personal, and that is humor. I actually expected to laugh a bit more. I didn't really find it that funny. And after watching all the trailers, I was like, oh my God, that was totally my humor. I don't know, I just felt like there was more to come, but then there wasn't. It was one of those cases where they put all the good jokes into the trailers. And that's always a shame because you then actually build on that and you want the entire movie to feel like that, but it didn't. And yeah, as I said, a lot of people around me laughed a lot, but it just wasn't always for me. Of course, some parts I also found really funny, but I wanted a bit more and I didn't get it. But let's finally focus on the plot of the movie. So Barbie is about Barbie entering the real human world with Ken by her side because she has somewhat of an identity crisis, because the human who's playing with her has a crisis herself, and she needs to find that human to make all of the changes that she experiences in Barbie world stop. So while she's trying to find the girl who's playing with her to confront her, she experiences firsthand what it means to be a woman in today's society. And unfortunately, she only experiences the bad things. And I know that's the point the movie wants to make, that we live in a patriarchy and that some things definitely still have to greatly improve for women. She kind of tries to navigate this unknown world. And I think, the portrayal of the experiences she has as a woman in a patriarchy, which she knows nothing about, it's very different to what she knows from Barbie Land, It is a very authentic thing. Like, I think most women can identify with the experiences she makes, and most women immediately understand the way she feels. So I did like that, but I also think that her experiences in this human world did not go far enough. I think the time she spent in the human world was way too short, and it was only negative, which leads me to the end of the movie. And I'm just gonna start with this topic, but I think it just makes sense to just go along with the point I'm trying to make. Why would she want to go back to that? Why would she want to choose the human experience when it was all bad? It made no sense to me that at the end of the movie, Margot Robbie's character, Barbie, tries to become a human and then succeeds. She is just part of the human world. She is a human herself. She becomes a human. And I'm just like, I don't understand. Why? You only made the worst experiences. And at the end of your human world experience, you were even hunted down. Like, all of that is so negative. Why, when your world is perfect, why would you want to return? And that's a big, big flaw for me. You know, Barbie could have just stayed in the human world, met Gloria and her daughter Sasha, which she ultimately meets later on in the human world. But, you know, they could have met just the way they did, and then maybe Gloria could have taken her in and shown her what it also means to be a woman. I mean, it's not all bad, you know, we have to just accept that and also just respect it. Of course, all the experiences Barbie makes are authentic, and they happen to me, and they happen to all my friends. And again, you know, most women can identify with all of the situations she's put in by other people. But why would she want to go back to a world that's been so cruel to her and so mean to her? I just don't understand. Why would not Gloria and Sasha take her in and show her what it also means to be a woman in 2023? Like, why not? I think if she had some perspective on what she could achieve and what great things being human actually entail, why not portray it like that? Why not make her see the bad sides, but also cherish and appreciate what being human also means? And there's a bright palette of wonderful things that being human really means. And it's a great additional point the movie could have made, that being human, despite being really shitty in some kinds of ways for everyone, actually is something really nice. So that's my first big thing. Why would Barbie want to become a human if the only experiences she makes in the human world are that bad? And I think this is also why I didn't really enjoy the ending that much, because it didn't mean anything, because it wasn't set up properly. So it was super black and white for me. There was no gray area, which was very necessary for this point to come across. So yeah, honestly, I can only repeat what I just said. It was not well thought through for me, and it was just way too one-sided. So now that I've mentioned Gloria and her daughter Sasha, I guess, oh boy, I don't even know where to start. These two are my main issue with the movie, I think, because everything that revolves around them, and as they are the catalyst for Barbie to return to the Barbie land, she knows everything that has to do with them is supposed to be super important and meaningful, but it's not. And I think it starts with little things. I think the relationship between them is very flat. You cannot feel the hardships, you cannot see the struggles of either of them or of both of them together as a mother-daughter duo. I love mother-daughter stories, and unfortunately, this one didn't even catch my eye because you never get a good enough backstory. You don't know what their issues are. I mean, you get a hint of that, but you never get enough information that you need to just feel for them and root for them. And this is really what bothers me. So Gloria struggles in the real world, which is why she starts playing with her Barbie again, and why Barbie in Barbie Land even notices that something is wrong with the girl, or in this case, the woman who's playing with her. So why do we never get to see the struggling that goes on for Gloria on a daily basis? You never have a moment where she's treated badly at work or badly by anyone else around her. You have moments with Sasha, but they're not enough, not even close. You never really see her struggling with anything, and that's an issue. If your point is that she's struggling and this is why this is all happening, then show us. I mean, sorry, but it was just so flat. And because I felt that Gloria was underdeveloped in her daughter as well, and the mother daughter relationship was not wholesome, I never really rooted for either of them. And talking about Sasha, why did we never see what womanhood really means to her? Why did we never get her wholesome experience that she's made as a young woman up to the point where the movie starts? And why do we never get to really hear from her why she's even invested in this plot? Why is she even part of that? Why does she want to help Barbie out? There is no real reason. And at the beginning of the movie, she's very anti everything. So I don't get why she would even be part of this experience, you know? Like Sasha's actions are not rooted in any reasons for her to change, you know, for her to change the relationship to her mom, to change in terms of just like being Sasha. So just like changes in her character, it made no sense because it was never rooted in anything. And character development and change in a movie is like the most important thing. If the character doesn't change or develop in any kind of way, why are we even making a story about this character? So her being there had no meaning to me. If we left her out of the movie, nothing would have changed. Sasha was just there. And it was such a shame because it could have been so great. She could have really been someone important for the plot of the story, but she wasn't. And it really bothered me. But now let's address the big elephant in the room, and that's Gloria's feminist speech. I honestly felt a little bit of a cringe when I listened to it. I never really enjoyed the basic 101 approach that this movie made to feminism because I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a feminist myself and I've been over that. But usually, I mean, we all have to start at some point, you know? Usually I don't really mind. And especially for a younger audience, this is probably exactly the kind of speech you needed. But was this movie really dedicated to a younger audience? I feel like no. I don't think so. And I don't know, all of this really didn't work for me. First of all, this big speech falls completely flat because we can't see the shift that's represented in her character. Like, why is she changing so suddenly? What is the catalyst for that? What's happening to her? Why would she be so invested in all of that? I don't know what makes her tip over. Like what is the thing that makes her be super crazy about helping Barbie out and figuring everything out in Barbie Land? What makes her leave everything behind, just rescue this woman and just go for it? And like what makes her change the relationship she has to her daughter? Like what makes her do anything? We never get a good reason for it. We never see the change that Gloria apparently goes through. And that's exactly the same problem I've been having with Sasha. Why is she doing what she's doing? We can't really tell. And this is also why, for me, this big feminist speech just kind of comes out of nowhere. Like, it was a good surprise. And I also really liked that, you know, we have this moment in the movie, but the way this moment was then portrayed and developed, it just wasn't enough for me. So this feminist message, as I said, was like a basics 101, like an introduction, you know, without any deeper or nuanced explanation. It was just super simple. And I mean, of course, you know, there are always people who don't really know anything about feminism, are not interested in feminism. And for these kinds of people, maybe that's like, oh, wow, yeah, she's right. I needed those simple terms. But I feel like for a movie that actually wants to give you like a deeper meaning, why not make it a little more interesting? It was not revolutionary at all, but it was portrayed that way. And you could argue that it was revolutionary for the Barbies and the Kens, and yeah, definitely for the Kens. But at the end of the day, was it really? Barbies in Barbie Land are presidents, are doctors, win Nobel Prizes. They've already been through all of the education, the development. Don't you think by now they would have figured out feminism as well? I just I just didn't believe it. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. So for me, I think there was just not enough substance, very little substance for dealing with a topic as important as feminism, especially because it's still so important. And I just wished for more. And I think that was like the silver lining I was missing. So, while dealing with really important topics that also make us worry on a day to day basis, I think, like, you know, figuring out who you are, figuring out your identity, and then also your place in society, while dealing with all of these themes, it just fell flat every single time and barely scratched the surface. And it could have been so great. And I think using these themes in a Barbie movie, what an amazing idea. And then it just didn't happen. So, yeah. Anyway, let's move on and let's talk about Ryan Gosling's Ken. So, I really like the character, and honestly, just saying, before the movie came out, I already knew that he was going to be the villain. I don't know why, but something must have tipped me off because he had such a weird energy around him, a weird Kenergy, if you know what I mean. But yeah, I really liked his character because he was super ridiculous, but also familiar in a kind of way. And, I think he had the best character arc. I'm just going to say it. Ken sometimes felt like the main character of the Barbie movie. And that might have been another issue I had. Why was there so much focus on Ken and his character development? I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching it, but at least I wanted the same for Barbie, and she didn't get it. So, yeah. I enjoyed it, but where was Barbie's character development and arc? Yeah, so that's another thing. But of course, I enjoyed the dance scenes. I enjoyed the songs, the way he played it. I saw all of the bloopers, the many variations of this one scene where he goes into his Mojo Dojo Casa house and just changes up the lines and makes Margot Robbie laugh every single time. Amazing. I mean, it was glorious. The way he portrayed Ken was just perfection. No arguing about that. But yeah, what I thought was another interesting topic or theme or situation that they portrayed was the difference between when, like the Barbies had their society and their power, how they dealt with the power. So, yes, the Kens were not the focus of Barbie Land, and definitely the Barbies had more like influence and more to say and to do. However, have you noticed that when it was the Ken's turn, they started forcing the Barbies to do things? The Barbies always kind of like left the Kens alone. They could do whatever they wanted to do. They never like forced them to do anything. But when it was the Ken's turn, they totally did. They made the women listen to them playing the guitar. They made the women watch The Godfather while they were explaining it. And also such a reality check. But what I'm trying to say is, I think that says a lot about the society we live in. And I think actually that was a good choice to portray it like that. And I think we should all really, really take a little bit of awareness into the scene and just make sure that we watch it very fiercely and pay attention. So, what are my final thoughts on the Barbie movie? I liked it. I enjoyed it. There were many, many things I really appreciated: the sets, the costumes, the cast, the music. So, not all bad. I gave it 3.5 stars on Letterboxd, which I think is good. It's still a sign of a good movie for me, but I had some major issues with the major plot points. And I think that the solution could have been such an easy one. And this is also why I left the movie in such a disappointed feeling, because it could have been so great. And it's like they missed this opportunity to create something that you would never expect from a freaking Barbie movie, a movie about a plastic doll. Again, I thought it was going to be a 19-minute commercial, and it could have been so great, and they put so much into it, but it just barely scratched the surface of many, many topics that I found really important. And for that reason, Barbie is a fine movie. Again, it's a solid watch, as I like to say, because yeah, it's fine. It's okay. You can watch it, you can enjoy it, you can laugh, you can appreciate many things. But it was not worth the hype, and I think it was definitely not what I wanted it to be. While I was editing this episode, I realized I had never gone back to the one thing I wanted to mention about the nominations Barbie received. So, of course, I think at this point we've all heard about the controversy that Margot Robbie and Greta Gerwig both did not receive a nomination for the Barbie movie, but others did. And honestly, I was just as surprised and also shocked to learn about that, because honestly, I couldn't believe that the two people who were responsible for the making of this movie did not get an Oscar nod. You know who put it perfectly? It's Ryan Gosling, so let me quote him for you right now. He said, "There is no Ken without Barbie, and there is no Barbie movie without Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie, the two people most responsible for this history making, globally celebrated movie." And I can only agree with him. I honestly can't understand why the two women who were responsible for making this movie, a movie that's been globally appreciated and loved for months now, and still celebrated, why can they not get their Oscar nod? And I know that many people from the movie industry said sometimes it just happens. Sometimes you just don't get the Oscar nod and you just have to be okay with it. You can't nominate hundreds of people. And that's, of course, true. But what I don't understand is why would you nominate someone like America Ferrera, who is not more or less groundbreaking in her acting or in the part she played, compared to Margot Robbie. And honestly, she gave a good speech about feminism, but I've heard this kind of speech countless times. And it was not the way she portrayed it that was so mind blowing to me. Honestly, what I've never seen is someone playing a plastic doll coming to life, trying to figure out what her identity in this world is, what it means to be a woman, to understand the differences between feminism, patriarchy, and just general human life. So I'm not saying take away the nomination for America Ferrera. I'm just saying, why isn't Margot Robbie included in the mix? Or Greta Gerwig, for that matter. And I think now it's time to talk about Oppenheimer. I think we should not waste any more time and dive right into this Oppenheimer review. However, of course, I'm going to start by reading you the super long list of nominations, and it's quite an impressive one. So let's just get started. Oppenheimer is nominated for Best Picture, and Cillian Murphy is nominated for Best Lead Actor. And if he hadn't been nominated for this one, I think I would have lost it. So very happy about that. Robert Downey Jr. is nominated for Best Supporting Actor and Emily Blunt for Best Supporting Actress. Christopher Nolan is nominated for Best Director. Then the movie is nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Original Score, Best Cinematography, Best Costume Design, Editing, Sound, Production Design, and Makeup and Hair. So I think Oppenheimer is going to go home with some trophies that night. Maybe I should start by giving you some general feelings I have about this movie. And I'm just going to say that I really liked it. It was definitely too long. We don't have to argue about that ever. But I think I really liked Oppenheimer. And even now, like after 6 or 7 months, I still like it. And I have seen it once. So maybe that's, like sometimes you make good memories and then when you go back, you're like, why did I like that? But I just ordered, like super old school, the DVD, and I'm very excited to watch it again before the Oscar ceremony because I actually think I'm still going to really like it. I definitely thought it could have been much shorter, but all in all, I'm just going to say it. I really enjoyed watching this movie. And of course, I was terrified. And of course, I was shocked and completely overwhelmed with the matter at hand. But in general, I think I really enjoyed this movie. And I'm not saying this lightly about a Christopher Nolan movie. I am not the biggest fan. I keep saying that. I realize that I keep saying that about many really famous directors, but I'm not too shy to admit that I'm not sure I really understood Tenet. And maybe it's me, I'm just gonna say it. Maybe it's me. But I understand Inception was a really good one, but it's always like hit or miss with him. So for this one, quite the hit for me. Now, where to start with a review of that movie? Maybe with the beginning. When I bought my tickets, one of my friends, she came with me, and I was very relieved because I wasn't sure I was going to do this all by myself. But when we bought our tickets, we knew the movie was going to be 3 hours long. And we were very intimidated by that. At least I was, because I'm always like, okay, when am I going to go pee? Because that's like a legit concern. But other than that, I sometimes have the feeling that movies that are longer than like 2.5 hours, they just repeat themselves and they're just too long. And I think that, you could have told that story in a much shorter time as well, but the visuals somewhat made up for it, and also the dialogues somewhat made up for it. But just to give you an example, I want to talk about a movie that was almost 3 hours long and already way too long. And that is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, a movie I should have loved. I have such a weakness for the 60s, the 70s, and then the cast was also very good. And then it said Quentin Tarantino. So There were all the right things in the mix for this movie, but it just failed terribly, in my opinion, because it was too long, it dragged on, it was just boring because it didn't have any interesting dialogue. Although, you had all the chances, you had a great cast, which definitely is always a very important part about, like delivering lines in a very good way. So I expected them to do so, and they tried, but there were no good lines. So it was just boring. The story was just boring. And the movie could have been so great because you have all these amazing visuals, you have the great costumes, you have the great music, and music in a Tarantino movie is always exceptional. And I feel like that's like the one thing that also worked out for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But what I'm trying to say is, it was almost 3 hours long, so shorter than Oppenheimer, but it failed because it couldn't keep me interested. And Oppenheimer managed to do so by actually, we're going to go through this list, but good dialogue, interesting storylines, and then also, going back and forth in time and just making you feel invested in the characters and the storyline. And sometimes I feel like the recipe is so easy, but you still have to make it happen, You still have to put the cake into the oven. And if you don't, then you just can't expect something great. So I was actually surprised. Yes, the movie could have been shorter, in my opinion. Yes, you could have told the same story in a great way in like 2.5 hours. But I think the time and the length of the movie didn't bother me enough. And that is such a great sign. Usually, when I see a movie is 3 hours long, I'm immediately like, oh, it's such a struggle. It's just so annoying. You just feel like, if I go to the movie theater and the movie's supposed to start at 8, that just means there's going to be another half hour of just commercials. And then the movie is going to start at 8:30. So if the movie is 3 hours long, the movie will end at around 11:30. That means I will definitely not be home by midnight, probably by like 12:30. But oh gosh, no. I'm just too old for that. I can't deal with this anymore. But you know what? For Oppenheimer, I didn't mind that much. I actually think I really got out of the movie theater at like 11:30. But, I looked at my friend. We had a little chat afterwards, like a very short one because we still both wanted to go to bed. But we had a little chat, and I don't think either of us really minded. So I guess for me personally, those 3 hours of Oppenheimer were a success. As is normal for a Christopher Nolan movie, there was something going on with time. So there were no crazy time jumps or no crazy time shifts. But if I had to describe it, I'd probably say the movie was made up of narrative fragments. So the movie wasn't told in a chronological order. And I think that doesn't really matter if at the end of the movie you understand where you are in the story. And I think Oppenheimer made that work. I'm especially referring to a scene at the end of the movie, and that is the conversation between Albert Einstein and Oppenheimer. And you see the same scene in the beginning of the movie. And at least in my movie theater, everyone was surprised to learn when this scene actually happened, when this conversation actually happened. And I did like this kind of big reveal at the end. It doesn't only reveal something that is very important to the plot, but you also kind of understand when this conversation was happening and how crucial it also was to understand Oppenheimer's thoughts and feelings and motivations. And I believed at the beginning of the movie that it was actually happening before the Manhattan Project was even beginning. And then when you realize that it wasn't, and it was a conversation they had after the Trinity test, it was kind of a big reveal that made so much more sense. And I really liked it because, I kind of caught up to what time frames were actually used and what scene was said when. And that was very important to me. So when I left the movie, I felt like I knew what was happening at what time. And if I had left the movie theater not knowing, it actually would have been an issue for me. But yeah, very happy they managed to really make the audience understand that because the movie is so complex and there's so much that you just have to wrap your head around because I think only a few of us are really proper physicists understanding the entire matter of the movie. I mean, we can grasp, like what this was about and we can like grasp the physical concepts, But I think only a handful of us watching the movie were actual physicists diving really like deeply into the topic with Oppenheimer. And I don't want to feel dumb, but I'm just going to admit that I think for the general audience watching, it was already difficult enough and complex enough. So if the movie had messed with us time wise on top of all of that, that wouldn't have been really nice. So thank you, Oppenheimer, for clarifying everything in the end. So, as this movie covers long periods of Oppenheimer's life, we remember that it's a biopic. So, it's not only about the Manhattan Project and it's not only about the Trinity test, but it's also about Oppenheimer's personal life. And I think they left a lot out, which was a good choice, but they focused on two very important women in Oppenheimer's life. And they were Jean Tatlock and then his wife, Kitty Oppenheimer. And I really enjoyed both performances, both of Florence Pugh and Emily Blunt. I'm a big Emily Blunt fan, so I'm very excited for her nomination, but also that she just nailed this part. She was so good portraying Kitty Oppenheimer, and the way she did it just impressed me so much. So I wanted to focus on the acting and the actors first because I think that's like something I really enjoy starting with. So, as I said, I'm a big Emily Blunt fan, and I think she managed to portray Kitty Oppenheimer in a way that I expected, wanted, and needed. I think it was a very layered character, and it was such a wholesome portrayal. She had so many facets showing through, she had so many good moments to shine, but I guess her most impressive scene was the one when they are in this very strange scenario when Oppenheimer and Kitty have to suffer through this ridiculous hearing just instigated by Strauss to just kill Oppenheimer's credibility and his public image, his integrity, his influence both political and in the science community, and it's all to revoke his Q clearance. So the way Emily Blunt defends Oppenheimer, so Kitty defends Oppenheimer, and Emily Blunt portrays Kitty in that scene is just beyond amazing. She was so good. The way she just looked at her opponent in that scene, the way she just looked through him and stared into his soul, playing him too, and just delivering lines like no one has ever delivered lines before. I mean, I'm really hoping that this is the scene they're going to show when they introduce her Oscar nomination in that category. It has to be that moment from the movie because this is where she was shining the brightest. And on the other hand of the spectrum, there is Jean Tatlock, played by Florence Pugh. And I really like Florence Pugh, so I was, of course, also expecting a great delivery and great acting, and that's what we got. But these were very different scenes compared to the scenes between Oppenheimer and Kitty. So Jean Tatlock was someone that Oppenheimer had an affair with, and this is why they were only shown together, like just the two of them, in very intimate scenes and very personal scenes. And it all ended in a very dramatic way. Just a spoiler alert, of course. Jean Tatlock kills herself. And honestly, I talked to a lot of friends and, of course, like people in my inner circles, and we chatted about the movie when it came out and then months after that. And I heard quite a lot, actually, that they felt like Jean Tatlock's storyline was not necessary. And I did like the portrayal, I did like the scenes, but I also believe that if you had just cut Jean Tatlock from the movie, it would not have changed how I view Oppenheimer. It would not have changed my feelings about Oppenheimer. And it would not have changed anything about the story because the whole story with Jean Tatlock does not conflict with anything else that happens in the movie, except for like one moment when you learn that Kitty knows about it, that Kitty knows about her suicide, and that she still sticks to just being with Oppenheimer, that she's still with him in all this, and he has like a panic attack. And I actually do believe that if you had just cut Jean Tatlock from the movie, it wouldn't have mattered. But you could also argue, therefore, it also didn't matter for her to be in that movie and for the storyline to be in that movie. And I can also understand that. However, I do believe could have made the movie shorter, but I also very much enjoyed Florence Pugh's performance. Now let's talk big guns. So Cillian Murphy and Robert Downey Jr. I like Robert Downey Jr. I'm a big Marvel fan. I loved his Iron Man. Who didn't? But I actually didn't celebrate him as much as the rest of the world for this part. I think he did a great job. I think he deserves the Oscar nod. And I think that he managed to portray Strauss in exactly the way he should have been portrayed. So sneaky and dangerous, and yet also kind of charismatic. So all of that was something that Robert Downey Jr. brought to the table. I just didn't think it was like groundbreaking or anything. It was very good, but it didn't like blow me away. And also, it did actually remind me of Iron Man. I think there is this one kind of person he can play very well, and it's usually very confident people. And I don't mind. I also don't mind people being typecast. I really have no problem with that because for some actors and actresses, it works out very well. And I think it's exactly like that for him. I just don't think it was a portrayal of someone super different or something that I've never seen him do. So I enjoyed it, but it wasn't as mind blowing as I think other people described his performance to be. But now let's talk about Cillian Murphy. And I just wanted to say, I think everyone, like every person in this world, has their very own Cillian Murphy moment. And considering he's worked with Christopher Nolan for like 20 years, and considering I've seen a big handful of movies with him, so definitely more than five, so two hands full, I guess. Why? Why did it just happen now? Why did I have my Cillian Murphy moment with Oppenheimer? I could have had it with Dunkirk or any other movie I've seen with him, but no, it happened to me with Oppenheimer. I was sitting in this movie theater, blown away, mesmerized. I can't even describe it. It's so difficult for me to describe what I felt. It's that moment when you come home and then you Google what kind of movies you could watch with this one actor you've just discovered. But for me, it was Cillian Murphy, who had done like multiple movies and movies I've already watched. So what I did is start Peaky Blinders right after Oppenheimer because I was obsessed. Because the way he portrayed Robert Oppenheimer blew me away. I have literally nothing to criticize. No stares, no lines, no nothing. It was pure acting perfection for me. And I just want it out there that I want him to win this Oscar so much. So my fingers are crossed. And I know a lot of people are crossing their fingers as well because the performance was just so great. So I guess the chances are pretty good looking. And yeah, let's see how he does on March 10th. I'm very excited. Oh, and I just realized I forgot about Matt Damon. But Matt Damon played someone he always plays. So I also think there is not much to say about that. It was fine, but I've seen it hundreds of times. So yeah, it was a very regular, normal, standard Matt Damon performance for me. And when you think about all the other super famous A-listers that took part in this project, it's actually a crazy long list of famous people. When you think about Gary Oldman or Rami Malek, people who showed up for what, like 5 lines? That's insane. And also such a high compliment for Chris Nolan that they were just like, okay, I'm in. I'm going to do it. Give me whatever I need to say and I'll do it. And even if it's like a super teeny tiny part, I think they did it really well. So seeing all these A-listers and super high profile actors, it was very nice to just see them show up and like unite for this project because I mean, I guess they believed in it and they really wanted to be part of it. So yeah, I thought that was actually really cool. Also, Kenneth Branagh, a fan favorite, I think, at least since he played Gilderoy Lockhart in Harry Potter. I mean, awesome. Now let's finally talk specifics in terms of technical details. I think the most obvious thing no one could have ever missed watching this movie is the black and white and color change. And yes, I had to suffer through even more black and white. And this is like, it's a thing. I'm not making it up. I've just been seeing this everywhere. And I feel like it started last year and it just continues to be a black and white renaissance in 2024. But yeah, I think it's going to be fine. It's going to go away again at some point. But you know what? For Oppenheimer, at least I can say it was not the worst decision because it had some meaning behind it. And if something has meaning or a purpose, then at least I'm okay with accepting it, Like I don't have to fall in love with it, and I certainly won't. But it's okay for me to just accept that it's there and that it serves some purpose. And although I didn't realize it while I was watching the movie, I then later on read up on everything and the decision making, and I realized everything that was shown in black and white served as objective facts and the objective portrayal of events. And then everything that was shown in color was from Oppenheimer's personal perspective. And realizing all of that and the meaning behind the color changes, it made absolute sense to me to use this as some kind of device, like a technical device to really move the plot along and help the audience sort of like decipher what's real, what's a personal thing, what's like an impression, or what's something that could also be shown from a different perspective if you had just chosen a different protagonist. So I think making that choice really helped the audience. And in hindsight, I can absolutely respect that they did it that way. And also, it serves as an easy tool for the director or the filmmakers in general to make that separation. I couldn't really imagine anything else that would be so clear and so obvious. So I think, again, in hindsight, it was a good decision to make. And as per usual for a Christopher Nolan movie, he did not use any CGI, not even for the Trinity test. And that to me seems insane, but also super impressive. And I recently watched an interview with Cillian Murphy who described that for Inception, Nolan did the exact same thing. And I think he always tries to stay as far away as possible from CGI and manages most of the time. I'm not 100% sure, but I think for most of his movies, he never uses any CGI. So they built a model of the bomb itself, which makes total sense. So they could film it from every angle and put it into the wires and everything. So that, I guess, is something that you can see other people do as well, And fun fact, actually, Christopher Nolan was asked if he keeps it in his garage, and he was like, no, but it's around somewhere. And I get that. But when we think about the explosion and the nuclear blast itself and the bright lights like the flash and everything that accompanies a nuclear blast. So basically, when we talk about the pyrotechnic side of things, they used a combination of many different things such as magnesium, aluminum powder, I think propane and gasoline, and they tried to recreate it on a microscopic level, but also a colossal scale, because of course it's a huge explosion to recreate, and they use like many different methods to make it look real, and I think they achieved that. And what I found also very interesting was that Nolan said he filmed his actors before the explosion, during the explosion, and after the explosion, so he could really get all the reactions and it looked real. And I'm just gonna say it looked real to me, and I knew it wasn't real. Like, when you watch a movie like that, this is not happening. But when it looks like it's happening, it still amazes me to this day that movies can make you think something is real that isn't, but you're sitting there in this very comfy theater seat and you're like, that really just happened, because it's mind-blowing, and it's also mind-blowing to recreate something like that. Before I continue with more details and technical things, I just wanted to summarize a couple of things, because I think, we've reached the point of the explosion, so basically half of the movie, and I wanted to just mention a couple of things that came to my mind. So I know that a lot of people said that at this point, after the explosion of the bomb, the movie really fell flat, and I just can't agree with that. I really enjoyed the second half as well, everything that has to do with the political maneuvering, with the hearing, with everyone questioning Oppenheimer's security clearance and affiliations to communism or the Communist Party. And I think the second half was much stronger in dialogue and just acting, while the first half was literally explosive. So the tension and the excitement was much stronger in the first half of the movie. But I also really enjoyed the beginning, because I think what the movie really, really made work was visuals. These were just overall great visuals. And it starts when Oppenheimer is still really young, lying in his bed and just mentally diving into physics, like into matter and everything. And you see all of the like light flashes and other tiny explosions, etc. But it continues all the way until the actual explosion of the atomic bomb. So I think that when people say the second half fell flat, they just expected the movie to keep up the tension. And I don't see how this could have ever worked out. I think the way they did it, you have the physics part and everything regarding the Trinity test and Los Alamos and everything that has to do with that. And then you have the more personal part. And at the end of the day, it was not a movie about the atomic bomb and the Trinity test. It was a movie about Oppenheimer. At the end of the day, it was a biopic. So they needed the second half of the movie. And I think it definitely did not fall flat. But I have to say, I also definitely enjoyed the first half a little bit more. And I think, everything leading up and then the final explosion of the bomb were definitely my highlight of the movie. It was so epic in scale, and the cinematography was just amazing. And all of that, like the blend of historical documentary or dramatic thriller or, I don't know, biopic, all of that really worked really well for me. And it just worked together as well, I think if you had just chosen one of these things, so just biopic, just thriller, or just kind of historical documentary, it wouldn't have worked that well and it wouldn't have been that captivating. There are many reasons why I like the second half of the movie so much, and especially the hearing, because I think the hearing is a great example for political games and political maneuvering, but also for very human emotions such as jealousy. I think you very quickly realize that this hearing has a predetermined outcome and that it's just designed to strip Oppenheimer of his security clearance and also to discredit him. But what I liked watching was the betrayal on the one hand and the jealousy on one hand and the twisting of words, and then also someone coming to his defense, his wife Kitty, who really was the only one whose words were not twisted and who could actually push back during the hearing and defend her husband. And of course, we cannot forget that the second half of the movie also deals with the effects of the atomic bomb. So I think it was very interesting and a very conscious choice that they didn't show the horrors of the bombings and the suffering. And I think the scene in the auditorium where Oppenheimer gives this speech and he gets these flashes of the people screaming and suffering, that also certainly did not make you forget about the horrors of this project and the horrors of the atomic bomb. You totally understood the effects. And of course, historically, we all knew what happened and what horrors it actually entailed. But I think the movie did not have to show them graphically, visually, for minutes on end to make you understand what Oppenheimer was going through and also the actual effects of the bombings. So I think they handled it very well. You did not have the feeling that they tried to just like downplay it, but definitely didn't want to make a spectacle of it. And I did really like that decision. As I'm approaching the end of my review, I just want to leave you with some additional thoughts I have. And to summarize it, at first, I want to say that, in my opinion, the movie did justice to the weight of the subject. And I was hesitant at first, but they really convinced me. And in my opinion, small details and methods led to me feeling that way. So if I had to describe it, the first half of the movie felt like I was part of an intellectual discourse. Important scenes, small scenes, and even smaller details made me feel convinced. So, for example, just like writing on chalkboards felt like suddenly I was back in the mindset of being in school or university. And when you see these scenes in Los Alamos, all of these scientists arguing and trying to figure everything out, I thought it was so captivating to watch, and it made the audience feel like they were part of the project. And this is something that really worked for me. So I did enjoy seeing the young Oppenheimer get to the point where he would, at the end of the day, really be successful in making the Trinity test work and making this building of the bomb work and figuring the physics part of it out. So I think that really helped to make the audience feel invested. And I also really enjoyed that they shot on location. So very few sets were built. They actually went to the real Los Alamos where Kitty Oppenheimer and Oppenheimer lived and where they worked. So that made it feel even more authentic, in my opinion. And although I didn't watch the movie in IMAX format because there is no IMAX movie theater around, I think when you watch it in IMAX, it's probably even more impressive. I really like that Nolan shoots on film. It just gives it a certain love to detail or just love to, like movie making that sometimes when things are digital, I don't want to hate on digital movies, not even close, I don't mind. But I do also like working with film, I'm really into analog photography. And I know that's a completely different ball game, that's not even, you can't even compare that. But what I'm trying to say is I like doing things on film. And so I have an appreciation for directors working with film. And I think many movies came out being shot on film, and that's also really nice. Another detail I also really enjoyed were the extreme close-ups, and this is also why I enjoyed the end of the movie so much, where you end with this insane close-up of Cillian Murphy's face, or Oppenheimer's face, and you just see the pure terror in his eyes without him saying anything or doing anything. And all of these small details help me to really like and appreciate the movie, and to give it 4.5 stars on Letterboxd, and to give it a good rating, and to just feel convinced that this for me is certainly the most impressive Nolan movie I've ever seen, and also the most impressive performance by Cillian Murphy I've ever seen. And this is why I'm also rooting for all of them to win the Oscars and to get the trophies and just to succeed. And also, I honestly can't wait to see this snippet from the movie of Emily Blunt's scene in the hearing. I cannot wait. If that's not the scene they choose to show her performance in this movie, that would be really sad. But I'm really crossing my fingers, and I feel like that's the obvious choice. So this is the end of my review. I think I've said a lot, both about Barbie and Oppenheimer, and these movies could not be more different. And it was such a great experience to witness Barbenheimer life and be part of it. And I think at the end of the day, both movies were good. One movie was great, and you just have to make up your own mind. So I will talk to you in the next episode of my podcast. I can't wait. I will continue to do Oscar movie reviews. I think there's going to be at least one more episode of me talking about at least 3 to 5 movies. So there are a couple of good nominees on my list. Among them, there will definitely be Poor Things and Anatomy of a Fall. So get ready, get excited, and I'll talk to you later. Bye!